With the Dark World facing its impending destruction, the king believes he has no choice but to invade and conquer the neighboring human and dream worlds. This is Valis III! Valis III is one of 12 games included in Evercade cartridge 23, Renovation Collection 1. Valis III is the third of 4 games in the main Valis series, and while Valis 1 and 2 originated on the NEC PC-88 and was ported to several platforms afterward, Valis III had its origins on the NEC PC Engine CD, and afterwards received a downgraded port to the Sega Genesis/Mega Drive. And when I say downgraded, I'm not just talking about the removal of CD audio and animated cutscenes. Good chunks of the levels were removed as well. The North American Sega Genesis version of the game is what's included in Renovation Collection 1. About a year after Valis III received the North American release on the Sega Genesis, the game was brought over to the TurboGrafx CD in North America. So technically, even though the PC Engine CD version is the original, North America didn't receive it until after the Sega Genesis version. The game's intro starts out by recapping the events of Valis 1 and 2, which is good because the game was released before Valis 1 for the Sega Genesis and TurboGrafx CD. And although Valis 2 did receive a release in North America for the TurboGrafx CD, there was no North American release for the Sega Genesis, unless you count Sid of Valis, which is an altered version of Valis 2, but that wasn't released until the following year. Anyway, the important bits of the story from the previous titles is that Rogueless from the Dark World had invaded the Dream World, and Queen Valia had sent the Valis sword to Yuko and summoned her from the human world to help defeat Rogueless, which she succeeds in accomplishing. And then the Megas army from the Dark World invaded the Dream World, and Yuko returns to help defend it, but before she is successful, she's unable to prevent the death of Queen Valia. However, from Valia's will, she learns that Princess Valna is her sister, meaning that Queen Valia had been her mother all along. The backstory doesn't explain why Yuko didn't know this or why she had been living on Earth. Well, maybe you just have to play Valis 2 to figure that out. As Valis 3 begins, we learn that the Dark World hasn't been invading the other worlds just because they're evil, but rather it's because the Dark World is facing total destruction as it will soon be absorbed into the Netherworld. Thus, these invasions have been because the residents of the Dark World will need to find a new home or else be destroyed. The next and final invasion is being planned by Glamis, the king of the Dark World who possesses the Lethus sword, the counterpart to the Valis sword. Not all residents of the Dark World are in favor of the invasion, and a baron by the name of Lada is one of those who voiced opposition, but was killed by Glamis because of his stance. His daughter Cham is now out for revenge and hatches a plan to steal the Valis sword from Yuko to help with that task. She manages to steal the sword, but Yuko follows in hot pursuit, only to witness Cham being captured by one of Glamis' minions. Cham releases the sword, allowing Yuko to take possession once again, transform, and begin the game. The game plays very much like Valis 1, which is also on this collection. And it makes sense because Valis 3 was actually released before Valis 1 on both the TurboGrafx CD and Sega Genesis. Valis 1 on these platforms can be considered to be a remake or a remaster because the gameplay wasn't recreated from the original games, but rather it was based on the same type of gameplay from Valis 3. So it's pretty much the same controls as Valis 1, which I've already made a video for. You've got a regular jump, and by pressing up you can jump even higher. There's a regular attack button, and by pressing up while pressing the attack button you'll perform a magic attack. The dedicated slide button is here as well, though some levels are designed to where you'll actually need to use it. There are some pretty big differences though, such as the fact that there's no longer the ability to change attack types for your sword by picking up icons that were on the screen. There is a meter at the top of the screen that indicates the strength of your attack, and when you attack, the meter empties and immediately starts to refill. Power-ups can be acquired to extend the length of the attack meter, as well as speeding up the rate in which it charges. There are only 3 magic types in the game, Flame, Ice, and Thunder, and they are selected by item pickups this time around. The main reason there's seemingly less ways to attack, however, is because you can now switch between 3 characters as you play by holding down the slide button. Each character has different main attacks, but will also have different magic attacks for each magic type. There's Yuko with strong attacks but weak magic, Valna, Yuka's sister, who has weak attacks but strong magic, and Cham, of whom I'm pretty sure is the balanced character. All three characters share the same health and magic meters, but sometimes a character will not be available to use for some portions of the game. For example, you won't be able to use Valna until you free her, and then for a short time after that, you're forced to play as her. For most of the game, however, it's up to you to decide which character is best to use for each part of the game. Since the game's controls are very similar to Valis, which I've already talked about, I've got the same issue with the controls sometimes feeling a little bit unresponsive at times, and I still kind of wish that jumping high was just standard or done with a double jump instead of having to hold up and jump. But I suppose the controls are acceptable the way they are. I mean, I've certainly played far worse. The game itself felt a little bit more difficult than Valis 1, but that just may be down to not using the best characters for some situations. And the ability to switch characters is something I really like about this game, because it really gives you a reason to go back and play it again just to see how each character handles in each level they are playable in. When I first played through the game, I played most of the game as Yuko, and while the bosses remain fun to fight, some of them seem to take quite a while to beat, and afterwards I was thinking if they might have been easier if I was playing as a different character. Either that or there's some sliding technique I wasn't quite grasping. The game's original manual kept mentioning that you were invincible while you were sliding, but as I was playing that didn't seem to be the case, unless there was something I was misunderstanding. Regardless though, there was one level in particular that I felt took the difficulty just a little bit too far, in that it kept requiring you to slide under spikes while on a moving platform with nothing to land on nearby after you slide off the platform. It took me a good number of tries to get past that part. So ultimately, I enjoyed playing Valis 3. I mean, it's not my favorite game in the collection, but I did like it better than Valis 1, and it's primarily due to the ability to switch characters. But there also seemed to be a bit more to the cutscenes and presentation as well. So here we have the rankings for every game in the Renovation Collection 1. I was very tempted to put this on tier A right above Valis because the games are so similar, but the fact that you can change characters during the game kind of gives this one a little bit extra to go with, a little bit more replayability, I suppose is a better way to put it. And so I think I've got to put on tier S, but I don't think I liked it as much as El Viento, so we're going to pop it down below El Viento. And here we have the rankings for every game so far I've covered on the Evercade. And Valis 3 is gotta be taken up to tier S. We've got to find El Viento. Oh, there it is, pretty high up. So it's got to be somewhere below El Viento. Let's see. You know what? I think I'm going to put it right below the NES version of Double Dragon and right above the arcade version of the Mysterious Stones with Dr. John Adventure or whatever his name is. As with most of the other games in the Renovation Collection, there are a few codes here for Valis 3 that require button inputs, and as usual, I'll be referring to the buttons as if we were using the original Genesis controllers, since the buttons on the Evercade are remappable. The first code will need to be done on the title screen, and I find the best way to do this one is to hold up on the D-pad while also holding the A, B, and C buttons. Then press and hold the Start button. Then release up A, B, and C while still holding Start, and then release the Start button. You just want to make sure the Start button is the last button you release. If done correctly, a select map screen will show up, allowing you to start at any level you want to. So, the next code isn't really useful on the Evercade at all, but it's a bit interesting. Anytime during the game, press Start to pause the game, and then press up and the A button, and then unpause the game. This will switch the game to interlaced video mode. This is something that may have been useful if playing the game on original hardware on a CRT television, since interlaced video would have been used to increase the resolution, like from 240p to 480i, and possibly make the game appear to have smoother motion. But emulated in a high-definition display or through a capture device, the intended effect is certainly being circumvented somehow, and the image may not appear properly in motion, creating a combing effect, and that's certainly what you're seeing here. You can return the game back to progressive video mode by pausing the game and pressing up and C, and then unpausing the game, or it'll switch back automatically if a cutscene plays. So it's not really useful on the Evercade at all, and I'm only mentioning it because it is a bit of an oddity and not really something you'd see in a game. But at the same time, I don't really know what the effect actually is on original hardware with a CRT television. Does it actually switch the resolution from 240p to 480i? I couldn't really find out any answer online, and I'd be interested in experimenting with it myself. I mean, I still have a Sega Genesis and a few CRT televisions, but I'd need a copy of Valis III, and a loose cartridge is going for around $50 these days on eBay, and I don't think it's worth that much just to find out. I mean, I guess I could also test it using an Everdrive, but I don't have one, and those aren't exactly cheap either. So unless anyone has an answer for me in the comments, it'll just be something I wonder about in the back of my mind until I stumble upon an answer. And that'll wrap it up for Valis III. Next time will be a look at Renovation Collection 1 as a whole before moving on to Gremlin Collection 1.